Hello everyone, I'm AnimusJ and welcome back to another Minecraft video. Today we're going to be talking about flying machines. And just as a precursor, this does apply to all Bedrock editions, which is the Pocket Edition, Windows 10, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, all of those versions. It may apply to future Java Edition. If Java Edition ever has zero ticking removed, it would have to behave a lot more like this video is about to show. So to start off, what happens with a flying machine is you have one piston facing one direction into a block, and then you have another piston facing the other way into a block as well. Now, those can't just be normal blocks, they have to be either honey or slime, it doesn't matter which flavor. The important thing is it has to be able to pull and push the other block. So if I push the lever on here, you can see our piston right here gets pushed along with the honey block. And then if we were to let go of this, obviously it's going to pull back, and that's because this is a sticky piston. Now in Java Edition, when you what's called zero tick, basically you use an observer in order to give a really fast pulse on a piston. It would send it out and it would leave it out there so that it would actually be right here at this point. In Bedrock Edition, that does not work. As you can see, what happens is that it brings it right back to it. So a basic flying machine in Java Edition is going to look like this. It has an observer facing down into either a honey block or a slime block with sticky pistons on both sides. Then what happens is you activate, let me make sure this is facing the correct way. Okay, then what happens is you activate one of the observers and it pushes one side out, and then that in turn activates the other observer, which activates the other piston and pulls the other side back in. In Bedrock Edition, however, you can see that it's a little weird. So what's happening right now is the observers and pistons are fighting over priority since they're updating at the exact same time, and they're not being zero ticked. They're both pushing and pulling each other at the same time. So how do we get around this, and how do we make a consistent flying machine in Bedrock? Well, if we're going to make a one direction flying machine, that's actually not very difficult. Put a regular piston, put a honey or a slime block next to it, and then what you need is you need an observer facing down into that, and that should pulse it. And then what you're going to do is on the opposite corner, you're going to put another observer, making sure the redstone side is facing down. Put a honey block or a slime block in front of your regular piston, and then next to that, a sticky piston. So you should have a sticky piston facing backwards, and you should have a regular piston facing in the direction that you want to travel, with honey blocks or slime blocks connecting them. So what's going to happen is this observer is going to fire first. It's going to put power into this honey block, which is then going to power our regular piston. What that's going to do is it's going to push those blocks out, and as you can see, this one reacted to this observer's update and pulled it back in. Now the reason this one didn't pull is because I locked it with a lever just to show you guys what was going to happen. So if I place that back in and we just get this going, you can see it's going to continually travel in one direction. Now the problem is we cannot make this return back to the other direction, as this piston right here is only a piston. It can only push, it cannot pull. In order to get it to go back the other direction, we would have to switch this one to a sticky piston and this one to a normal piston, and then update the observer, and you can see it's going back the other direction. So how do we make two-way flying machines in Bedrock? Obviously we can't stand here changing out the pistons all the time. Well, there is a solution, it's just not very easy. So how do we make a two-way flying machine? Well, yeah, it's a lot more complicated. See, what we have to do in order to make a machine fly one way and then come back to the other direction is we can't be swapping out blocks, but both of these are sticky pistons, as you can see. If I use pick block, it goes to sticky piston, all right? And what we're doing is we're using glazed terracotta to make the sticky piston on one side act as if it's a normal piston, because if we use a sticky piston on a piece of glazed terracotta, what happens is it presses it, but it's not able to pull it back, and that's how glazed terracotta interacts when dealing with slime blocks, honey blocks, and sticky pistons. So then what we need to do is we need to make it so that in one direction, the sticky piston is pushing on a glazed terracotta and the other one is pulling either a honey block or a slime block. So in this case, I am set up to be able to travel in that direction. And the reason for that is because this sticky piston will only be able to push this terracotta, whereas this sticky piston will only be able to pull this honey block. The rest of the encompassing blocks are to keep everything held together. Now, as usual, I have an observer block that's on the back, and I'll show you why it's on the back rather than the side or up on top in just a second. I have a piece of obsidian here that is going to stop it when this observer hits this obsidian. And then what we do in order to get this going in that direction is we have to shift all of these blocks over by one so that this sticky piston is going to line up with this piece of slime, thereby pulling, whereas this sticky piston is going to then line up with this terracotta and thereby pushing. So then this is going to come over to this end, where what I've done is I've set a piece of obsidian behind my piston, and as you can see, what happens is it detects that it has arrived and sends it back on its way. So let me just disconnect the return for this really quick. We'll send it down there. And as you can see, this sticky piston is constantly pulling the slime and this half of the machine to it, whereas this one is constantly pushing that half away. Now, what's happened is the way that I've stopped this is this slime block right here is getting stuck to our piston that presses this half of the machine over by one block, but because there's an obsidian block behind it, it can't push it anymore. Then what I have over here is I have an observer watching for this observer to arrive. Once it arrives, it activates this redstone signal right here. This button is just for demonstration. And then it goes into 2 repeaters. Now, where your repeaters are doesn't matter. It just has to be 2 repeaters, 4 ticks each. And then what I'm doing is I'm powering a block below the piston in order to activate it, which then pushes this entire half of the machine over by 1 block. Once it's over by 1 block, this terracotta lines up with this sticky piston, causing this one to only push that direction. And this sticky piston that I just broke is then going to line up with this honey block, causing it only to pull again in that direction. Now, you can add more blocks to this. For example, if I wanted my honey blocks to come all the way out here much further, I could absolutely do that. Just what you need to keep in mind is that each half of the machine cannot have more than 12 blocks. So here we have 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So this is the max amount of blocks that this side is able to have. So if I send it on its way, it's still able to push it because it's at the max amount of blocks. Now, likewise, I can add blocks to my slime side as well, just keeping in mind the same thing. It can only have a maximum of 12 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, one thing I recommend doing if you're using these is that you put something on the end of them. I like using a piece of glass, and the reason for that is because let's say that I'm using this for a farm, and this is the wall of my farm. What's going to happen is if I have this maxed out at 12, this is not going to fire because now this honey block is going to try and pull this, making it 13. So if I make my 12th block be a piece of glass, and again, it doesn't have to be glass, that's just what I like to use. Now the wall of my farm can be here, and this glass is just going to move along the wall without any problems. Now, the one issue, as you're about to see, by adding slime blocks is I've changed the location that my piston needs to be. So in this case, because I've added all of these blocks to it, what I need to actually do is move my piston to be way out here. And then I need to likewise extend both my obsidian block behind it and all of my redstone that connects to it. Now, what I should be able to do is activate this line, and it's going to push the entire assembly in that direction. And there you have it. Now we have a two-way flying machine. So as you can see, in Bedrock Edition, they are nowhere near as simple as they are in Java Edition. They are still possible. It just takes a little bit of thinking and a lot of engineering. And in regards to engineering, it only takes a little bit of re-engineering in order to make vertical flying machines. So if I place obsidian blocks on the bottom and the top, you can see it applies the same premise. In order to make a machine fly up or down, you just have to reorganize where your blocks are facing. So if I have a regular piston facing up and then a sticky piston that is facing down, what that's going to do is it's going to cause my machine to press up and pull up. Again, we're also going to need our observers, but I always recommend breaking out your other blocks when putting in observers because otherwise it'll activate them, cause things to fire prematurely, and then mess up. So then, with my observers facing into slime blocks and my slime blocks being next to a regular piston and a sticky piston, I should be able to activate this and have a machine that will fly upwards. And of course, if I change the orientation of my pistons so that the bottom one is sticky and the top one is regular, we can make a machine that is going to fly downwards. And then if we do some super crazy engineering, we can change it to be just like this, only vertical, and that will cause you to have a machine that will fly up and return to fly back down. But that is everything that I know about flying machines. Do you know something that I don't know? Did you catch a mistake? Or do you know how to do it easier? Please tell me you know how to do it easier, because I would love an easier solution to all of this. But that's it for today, you guys. Make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. If you're new, I would love to have you subscribe. I'm AnimusJ. I'll see you next time.